Welcome back to Let the Quran Speak. Brother Shabir, in our second topic today, it is often seen that Islam is accused of never having gone through enlightenment, which is why we see the problems we see today. Muslims make it a way of their life. We see Islam in politics. We see Islam as a part of the state in general, where Islam is trying to apply. There are many Islamic parties trying to get into power all across the world. Yet in Christianity, there's a separation of church and state now. First off, why do we see this in Islam? Why don't we see a separation of church and mosque, so to speak?
Well, I think perhaps we should ask it the other way around. Why do we see a separation between church and state largely in the West? Mm-hmm. And then we'll understand why this hasn't occurred in Islam as well. Well, mm-hmm. It seems to me that what has happened in the West is that Europe went through its Enlightenment phase. And that enlightenment was not just simply a development from the past. It was a kind of a revolution mm-hmm. Of ideas. It was like you had one paradigm through which you viewed everything, and now you have to turn it completely upside down and view everything from a different angle. What happened there in the Middle Ages is that people began to study certain things very carefully. Especially the issues connected with the dogmas of the past and the scriptures that are connected with those dogmas. And people eventually came to discount these dogmas one after another and realized that these things do not really quite measure up. Mm-hmm. So at least this is how they felt about it. This is what they thought they were doing. They thought we have to throw away all of these old dogmas and even the scriptures that are connected with them. They found errors in the scriptures, and they thought, well, our only way forward is to devote ourselves completely to science. They saw science and religion as two different things, contradictory to each other. They have to embrace one in order to they have to leave one in order to embrace the other. Mm-hmm. And science was obviously of such great importance that could not be left. It seemed to be important for our daily lives, and so they left the other thing. Why has this not occurred in Islam? Well, obviously because among Muslims, nobody has really come to this conclusion. The main beliefs of Islam are not contrary to reason and to science. Mm-hmm. In fact, Islam encourages the spread of science, and the Quran keeps appealing to people to use their reason, logic, look at evidence and proof, travel and observe, think about things, study and learn. Mm-hmm. So in Islam, what has to occur is not a revolution of thought, but a further development of thought. And that has been occurring over the many centuries and will continue to occur.
Now, often people accuse Islam of being backwards. It's stuck in the past. So that when we see Islam and politics get together, let's say a Muslim party does get elected, many fear that this would mean that human rights and basic rights of people would go backwards a step, which is why they are so adamant in speaking against it. Is Islam truly backwards? Is Islam too far behind compared to what human rights people are granted today?
I don't believe so. It is true that in the case of some parties and some interpretations of Islam, one has to be apprehensive lest such interpretations become the prevailing ones, and lest some such parties gain power, because it may in fact spell a reduction of human rights. But on the whole, no, I don't believe that Islam is against human rights. In fact, many human rights which have been achieved after many centuries of struggle, such as, for example, the rights of women in many countries, even in countries like France and United Kingdom, United States of America and Canada. Many of the rights which have been achieved actually have already been granted to women in the Quran, the sacred scripture of Islam. It is true that some interpretations of Islam which have prevailed in some centuries in the past were not conducive to these rights and did not actually bring to the fore those things which the Quran prescribed. But that does not prevent us from doing it now. And there's no reason now in our modern age, when we are armed with all of the knowledge of the past, that we should actually mimic the past and reproduce the errors of the past. Rather, we should be enlightened with the Quran. And we should use the Quran as the basis on which to grant such rights as human rights.
So it is safe to say that Islam will not be having an enlightenment simply because there's no need for that kind of enlightenment.
Well, I would put it the other way in saying that Islam's very enlightenment was with the Quran itself, which came against the backdrop of Jahiliyyah or ignorance, that lighted the way and showed the way forward. This was the light sent down by God. And Muslims have continued to be inspired by the Quran, and the enlightenment in Islam has not been a single moment in history that revolutionizes everything, but it has continued over time as a continuous development. It is possible that that development may grow exponentially and suddenly blossom out in a way like never before. But that will not be a revolution over the past. It will be a natural development from what has been taking place in the past.
Thank you, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with our question and answer session. Please stay tuned.